agenda. Running through the agenda and seeing if we need to make any changes to it. We start with community comments. We have a board vacancy update. We would like to appoint John Milazzo as the clerk for the district through town meeting day. We have a principal report from Smilie, which is where we are today. We have a superintendent report. We have an opportunity to discuss the compliance of the governance management connection and governance process for policy governance. We have time for committee reports, and then we have 2 previous meeting minutes to approve and any other business. I have received a lot of questions about Act 127 and the budget changes. And I'm wondering if we want to add that to the agenda as a discussion item, not to make any decisions, but just as an opportunity for a discussion.
What's going on?
Yeah.
It's not a, if the general feeling is that we should do that, then let's do that and maybe put that in before community comments or right after community comments, maybe right after.
I have something to add to the agenda.
To add to the agenda?
I just, while you were gone in the post for Front Porch Forum, I invited people who were interested in running for open seats to come to this meeting and ask questions.
That can be part of the board vacancy update.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure they had the floor to do that.
Great. Great. Thank you for doing that. Why don't we do the Act 127 discussion right after community comments, and then we can open up the floor back to community comments or allow it to be a community discussion if there are folks here that work. And then if we run out of time, we will push the governance management connection to another meeting. Yeah, okay. Yes, okay, great. Okay, then roll call, Pat.
Thanks. Hello. Tara Arneson.
Present.
Kevin Campbell.
Here.
Heather Chadwick.
Here.
Alison Conant. Gail Conley.
Present.
Edie Graining.
Here.
Eric Gildemeister.
He won't be here tonight.
Diane Kirsten Glitman.
I'm here.
Susan Lillich.
Here.
Ethan Maurer.
Here.
Stuart Morageau. Lisa Pollock.
Here.
Katie Nelson.
Here.
Andrew Pond.
Here.
And our student reps, Abby O'Malley.
Here.
And Gracie Batsey. No Gracie. Okay, thanks for everyone.
Thanks, Pat. All right, and the land acknowledgement we are still working on. We have some ideas and we will let you know when we have some progress on that. Opening up the floor to community comments. Is there anyone here? Great. So community comments will be limited to no more than 5 minutes per person. The board requests that the participants clearly state their name, place of residence, and topic of comment. The school board will take no action on items raised during the community comments, and dialogue exchanges will be for clarification unless immediate attention is required. Action by the school board will occur at a subsequent meeting. So Kevin, you would introduce where you're from. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And I actually have a comment on Act 127. So I don't know if you would like me to hold that or you'd like me to go ahead with it now.
Go ahead, please.
All right. My name's Kevin Unrath. I live in Jericho. I have 2 kids in the school system, one at Jericho Elementary, another at Browns River Middle School. I wanted to thank you for the time you dedicate to our community as a board. Although I voted in favor of increases to our school budget in all of the years in the past, and I consider myself a strong supporter of public education. I'm going to vote no on this school budget. I would encourage my fellow citizens to do so as well. I'm referencing your community communication that was sent out last week. In that, you write that Act 127's 5% tax rate cap is a lifeline for our district and allows us to make substantial improvements to our aging buildings, grounds, and infrastructure without changing the tax rate. It's my understanding that that is only true for the homestead property tax rate. Overall, in the state, we're looking at a projected 18.5% increase that will have to come from somewhere. And again, it's my understanding that the options are not great at this point and are being studied by the legislature. One place it could come from would be the non-homestead tax rate, which will impact not only businesses, but also renters in our community who are already paying very high rents. We could borrow money, again, from the general fund. Legislators are looking at potentially amending Act 127 for this, or if that sizable tax increase comes to pass, lifting that cap in the future. So I found that statement to be incorrect at best, and to my mind, somewhat disingenuous. I also just have some questions about it. One question I had related to the 5.67 million you listed in additional building and facility upgrades. 5 million of that you noted in your presentation was for HVAC upgrades. And I just wanted to know if those were part of a identified capital improvement plan that you already had in place, or if that's just money you set aside because it was available. And finally, I wanted to note the what looks like a 10% increase in personnel budgeting outside of the increase that is unavoidable for healthcare costs. Of course, I believe employees should have their healthcare covered, but I do question whether a 10% increase in a personnel budget in 1 year, when inflation is hovering somewhere between 3 and 4%, is really needed. And that is my comment.
Thank you. I believe most of that will be addressed when we have our discussion. So appreciate the comments and please stay on with us. Any other community comments? Is it 127?
No.
Go ahead, Ethan.
I had a community member reach out to me in regards to next year's calendar. I think some of you might have seen the town clerk from Huntington's post regarding having school on election day, and a lengthy conversation I think is worthwhile, but this particular community member was advocating for not having school in this upcoming election cycle.
Great, thank you. Any other community comments? Okay, let's have our discussion on Act 127. Not really sure how to kick this off. I feel like we've been talking about this a lot, and I know that there continue to be more and more questions. So I'm wondering if someone has specific questions that they wanted to start with, or if you want me to start with the community comments that we had. Do you have a way that you want to talk about this, or Lisa? Lisa's here.
Do you have any insight you can share from being a billionaire that's going to make any difference, or?
I wonder if that's relevant right now.
So the letter that came out last week after we passed our budget was written by the chair of finance in the Senate and the chair of Ways and Means in the House, and was not a letter from the legislature per se. There was no preview. There was nobody knew it was, actually nobody. the general legislature didn't know it was going out before it went out. So I think that's a factor. I think that I have been getting questions similar to the one we had tonight about what that extra money would be used for and what that details. And I think that it's important to direct folks to our capital plan that shows all of our buildings and what is, which items are coming up for needing to be updated or fixed, or I don't know what the right word is for that. Addressed, thank you. There are a lot of things there. We always have parts of our buildings that we're working on, and we always have a list bigger than the amount of money that we could possibly cover in that year. So recently there was a review from the legislature of all of the buildings in the state, all of the school facilities in the state, to figure out how much funding was actually necessary for maintenance and upkeep and school construction. And that number is, John, do you have a number? It's a ridiculously high number.
$6 billion.
And our schools came in middle of the pack to lower end of the pack because our buildings are so old.
Yeah, we have a lot of older systems. Right before COVID, we had a pretty extensive assessment done, particularly of HVAC by ECI. And we identified more than $6 million worth of upgrades that we would want to do. So we have a pretty recent study that outlines a bunch of HVAC systems that we want to update. Everything.
And when you're talking about, yeah, I was going to say, when you're talking about that, you're not talking about the fresh air in the buildings, because we did all of those kind of updates, but you were just about to get more detail. You're talking about,
yeah, exhaust fans, heating, cooling, all of the systems that make up, heating the buildings, carbon, CO, and also, like you said, fresh air intake and exhausting inside air.
Yeah. I'll try to get it started a little bit here. Maybe a little long-winded. We'll see where it goes, but the community member, I think feedback was definitely relevant. And for me as board member, you see both sides of it, and you see that this money that we add to our budget needs to come from somewhere, and the state can't print bills, and there isn't a windfall of revenue that was set aside to cover this budget. On the other side, as a steward of a district, we've been struggling for over a decade to find ways to fund this work without putting a significant burden on our local taxpayers only, in ways that in the past have been shared by the state through capital fund matching and that kind of thing. But it's apparent in what we're getting from the state that they didn't really plan for that. And there are many school districts who are doing the same thing we're doing. So we're definitely not alone. And it's just unfortunate that we are where we are. I don't think as a board, if we said, hey, there's this opportunity to leverage the tax law right now, and we're going to say no for the greater good of the state, we would be hearing from other people saying, you missed an opportunity, you should do it. And it'll be, if we go forward with what's on the table right now, where we put this budget out there, and I think we did the right thing to communicate what we're doing well in advance so we can have the conversation. When our district votes on town meeting day, we'll get a gauge. What's more important, our individual district and our homestead tax rate, or those other elements that this budget's going to cause. And that'll be the mandate that we take away from it. Or maybe between now and then, there'll be some dials changed, some laws passed that say, we fixed the law and now you have to reset a different budget. Maybe we have to defer a vote. Maybe they'll force a vote. There's so many things the state could do to kind of fix this. And also the problem was created by what the state did. So hopefully they don't do more of that. Hopefully that they fix it. But we're in this weird position where we could put a budget forward between 45 million and $60 million or whatever. And we're telling people it has the same effect. So we are at kind of the state's mercy right now, and they created this problem and we're trying to navigate it. But I don't think personally, based on what we've heard so far and even what the letter that came from the state said, I don't think it's in our best interest to make a change right now. And I don't think we even can.
Can we just say where this letter can be found so that people who are watching this know how
Yeah.
to reference it?
Where can it be found, Katie?
Well,
It was printed in Digger, I
right,
believe.
that's what I was gonna say. And so this letter we're talking about is from, it just says General Assembly at the top, but it's posted in Friday's Digger article referencing this entire discussion. So I just want to clarify that.
I want to add to what Kevin was saying. The CLA is really contributing to this. In our letter, in our community letter, we talked about being a disadvantaged district because of student funding. When we talk to other districts that are considered advantaged by the student funding, they are now disadvantaged because of the CLA. So even districts that look like they were going to do a heck of a lot better than us are not, and are approaching and are utilizing that 5% cap like we are doing. So there are a number of districts who are adding this into their budget to keep positions that were funded by ESSER, or to make capital improvements, or to do something that is going to benefit our students. I don't think any school board has taken this lightly, and I don't think any school board has just thrown in there, we're gonna tack on this money and we're gonna give all of the kids a pizza party every week. I think there has been a lot of thought put into every budget that is passed already. And there's a number of school boards that are going to pass their budget either this week or next week.
This week has to be this week.
This week, okay. Do you want Diane and I just met with the VSBA as well. I can hold those until later in the agenda, or I can.
If it's more about Act 127, that would be good, but let me do one thing first.
Yeah.
Before you do that. Because I also got a question about the 11%, what looks like an 11% increase for staffing costs. And a portion of that is an increase in our contract. A bigger portion of that is the fact that we no longer have outside resources to use for our students, for our highest need students, and we've had to bring a lot of that in-house. So there is a big portion of that that looks like an increase, and it's actually a shift in where the money is being spent in the budget. John, I don't know, or Nicole, if you have that number handy. I don't have it handy. But because there are so many vendors that support our schools for the students with the highest needs that no longer have space, we've had to bring all of that in-house. And we are incredibly lucky to be able to support those students that way. Our students are, and we've been doing this for years with different kinds of programming as the state no longer supports those kinds of programs. And so it's something that we've had the history of doing well, and it's too bad, because what it means is that our students in our district are really well supported, but because there isn't that community support anymore, only the districts that have those skills are able to support those students, and other students don't get the same supports. So I think that's a bigger issue statewide, but just so it looks like it's 11%. We did have a big increase in our contract. It was one of the biggest contracts that we've done, a 6.5% salary increase. And we're still on the middle to low end of Chittenden County salaries. So just to be very clear on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that, I think it's important also that we communicate that 6.5% increase is on top of this year's 6.5% increase that we didn't have in last year's budget. So
we only had a portion of that in this year's budget.
It gets more than one-time increase. A year and a half or something is worth of increase in this year's budget.
Yeah, it's like 9%.
Yeah, so even without putting additional expenses in for facilities improvements, our budget would be going up more than 10% when we add everything else in.
Budget, not
Right.
Not per student spending, right? Because they're two separate numbers that we need people to understand.
That's where even after staring at the numbers and talking to a lot of people, I still don't have the answer when I ask myself, when we're counting the pupils in the same way and we're weighting them the same way, why is this year's count and the forecasted count so different? If they were the same, we wouldn't be able to put $5 million into our budget because we would have already reached that 10% per pupil spending threshold just with our other costs. So how did it come to be that we're anticipating so many more pupil count next year when they're being weighted the same way? Does anybody know that answer? And does it make sense?
I do. And Nicole, if I miss something, let me know. And I shared this with Edie, and shared this today in a legislative meeting, but the restated FY24 to comply with 127 did not include Medicaid students, which based on the state's formula and the AOE are part of your economically disadvantaged numbers. So they get an extra weight, and that's the big driver in the increase compared to this school year. The data sets are not the same.
So the Agency of Education that restated the weights of students, that restated how we count students, use different ways to count the students in poverty for the 24 numbers than they did for the 25 numbers. We have for years been saying that you're not counting our students in poverty properly. We have more students in poverty than you think. And they've been saying, no, you're wrong. And now that they're using Medicaid, we have more students in poverty listed than we ever have before. So one way of thinking about this is that they are finally funding us appropriately for that. Another way is that, I don't know.
Yeah, well, because they're counting the same students differently from this year to next year, and they're adding 10% more pupils for long-term membership, whatever the number is next year, that gives us another 10% of room before we hit the 10% threshold. And that's where this $5.5 million is fit into. So if the state were to just say, count the 2 years the same, the problem / opportunity, for better or for worse, goes away. For us, yeah, I don't know what it's like in other districts.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, other districts don't have the same issue. Some districts, perhaps their poverty numbers have been overcounted because the Medicaid numbers are showing something different for them. I don't know the why for sure. And Nicole, if you have a different answer, please jump in. But The way these numbers are hitting statewide, it doesn't make sense. There are districts that were expected to get a bigger benefit that aren't. There are districts that were expected to get a smaller benefit that aren't. The modeling wasn't available until budgets were given, until it was time for school boards to approve budgets. There was no pre-planning. The Agency of Education was pretty late in providing the information to folks. And that's really what put us, I think that the costs this year would have been higher no matter what.
Sure.
Because it's more expensive for staff. Health insurance is more expensive. All of the costs that we've all, right, it takes a year. All of the costs that we've had all year are going to be more expensive. So I think that would be an issue statewide. And then this on top of it makes it even more complicated. So not to even talk about how the CLA impacts all of this. Nicole.
Yeah, I just want to echo that everything that you guys have all done an excellent job of describing that. And we found out like a fairly decent amount of time into the budget process about these additional Medicaid eligible students being factored into our free and reduced counts. So we anticipated, based on the information that the AOE gave us, the state percentage, the state average increase in long-term weighted ADM was 57%, and Mount Mansfield was a 27% increase. So we know comparatively to the state average that we were disadvantaged in that way, but we were not expecting these additional Medicaid eligible students.
That's really good information, Nicole. Thank you for sharing that.
So are there any actions we can take?
Are there any actions we can take as a board? John, you've been looking at this. We could have a special meeting to change our budget. We would have to warn it in advance. We could have a special meeting, and we can't do it at this meeting. It hasn't been warned. And it would have to be finalized by Thursday. That's our day that everything goes to the printer, this Thursday.
To hit the current.
To hit the deadline state for warning for the town meeting day. Yep.
Yeah, we would need to do something this week. Because we've, not to bore you, but we've got to get our ballots ready. We have to get the warning posted in the legal time frame. We have to get all our information to the printer for the annual report. And so we're really in a tight timeline. We could have a meeting. I think we could maybe even get it on Friday if we had some good information, a special meeting to talk about making some revisions, but we're on a very tight timeline. I've held back on sending some information to the towns for their town report because I would really like, I think but Edie and I talked about wanting to see what is going to happen in Montpelier. I think they're going to move things around or move the goalposts, and it's going to negatively impact Mount Mansfield. We need to know about that soon. But one of the things that has become really evident is that 127 is broken. It's got to be fixed. There's huge problems with it for every district. For districts that were historically disadvantaged, districts in between, and districts that are thought to have more tax capacity. It's not good for anybody right now.
And there are 2 hearings this week, one on Tuesday and one on Thursday, that may or may not impact things, but it takes longer than that for a law or a bill to pass, right? It would have to get voted out of committee, and then it would go to the floor, and then it would have a second reading, and then it would have a third reading. And so you're looking at the fastest pace possible Friday if all of these rules are suspended, but more likely a week from Friday. Or a week from Thursday. So I don't know that we'll have a whole lot more information. I can find out more tomorrow, but that's really, we're kind of in a difficult side. Did you have your hand up before I?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can wrap my head around it. So I'm going to express this as not necessarily a question, but maybe as much as a statement. So we know we have some drivers around our budget that we would always have: increase in salary, increase in healthcare costs. Those things are year to year ongoing as we go. So there's going to be an increase in our budget. That usually happens always. The question that I see at hand is that we added a significant amount to our budget around capital improvements, which is addressed through our capital improvement plan. We're almost accelerating that plan that was put together and the work that was done that was identified. This is not new work that we are just pulling out because we think we have some extra money. This is work that we've identified, and then maybe in other years we would have bonded to do a large capital improvement plan. So regardless of when it's happening, these things would be happening and we would be paying for it. In this particular scenario, the situation, I think what I understand is one of the frustrations is that we are not a single unit adding $5 million to the general pool of funds and asking the rest of the state to help offset that cost. But many districts are doing this as well. So in a especially difficult budget year, because lots of COVID era money is going away, there are these positions that we've added that were lots of things that happened to increase costs. And now we're stuck holding that past bill. Plus we've added on. So people are, I think, are concerned with the general kind of overall impact that we might, because we're not just talking about our 5 million plus increase. We're talking about, and I think John had referenced, 70% of the districts had done something similar to this. So all of that money is getting kicked out to the rest of the state for all of us to contribute. So I think it's important as like messaging and thinking about like responses to the public that this is information that, and again, it's not just sort of like we're looking at like kind of like making our rich district even richer. But that there are serious costs associated with this whole process as a statewide entity. I was going to put this out as my own statement. And again, I think the problem is not that we're asking to do these things, because I think they're the right thing to do. It's a good time based on the, as we've stated, a broken law. There is just not enough revenue in the system. And I think part of this is kicking back to, I think, the governor, the legislature, is that we do not have an equitable tax funding structure in the state, in this country, and that we are allowing people to capitalize individually on COVID era shenanigans, my word. But the bottom line is that there is money in this world to pay for these things. We have just as a society chosen to give it to people so that they can increase their bottom line, buy more yachts, buy more houses. Ethan's going on his soapbox here. But I think the bottom line is that the pressure that people are feeling around the cost is that it's not just us within this community, but it is spread across the whole state. And that is going to sort of impact everybody, because if 70% of the school districts are increasing their budget, we're all going to have to pay that amount the way they are.
Yeah.
It's the most equitable part of this.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention any school construction that has already passed. That's part of this too, right? So you have millions, hundreds of, not quite hundreds, tens of millions of dollars for school construction that has passed in the last year. That is part of this too.
Right.
All of that, part of that. Katie, and then Andrew, and then Diane. And then we're going to come back to Tara.
I just wanted to make sure that somewhere in this conversation, we talk about how this letter and the Digger article really had a lot of punitive verbiage. And so what happens when we, I'm being public, but what happens when we don't have a meeting, an emergency meeting to talk about how to change our budget to fit into something that they might want, but we don't know what that is, right? What happens when we pass this and put it forward and then they change the law? So I just wanted,
Yeah,
I've sort of thought about this, but it doesn't sound like it's the most friendly outcome for us.
yeah. I mean, when I brought this up with the legislative folks in power in December, I was told it's too late to make any changes. And now it's mid-January and there's a letter saying we're going to make changes. So I don't know if irony is the right word, but something is wrong with that picture, right? Because we have been looking at this and raising this flag as if this doesn't make sense. Somebody needs to fix the system for at least, months, right? So yes, and school boards are volunteers and we are the ones who are being hung out to dry. 100%, not saying it as a victim, just saying it as a fact of what's happening right now, because we do this because we want to have the best possible education for our students. And we're trying to be stewards of our community to make sure that the funding is there on both sides. So I think that yes, I don't have an answer. Yeah. Andrew.
Thank you. I have a question for the administration. I wonder if you could help me understand how much time you're able to spend thinking about actually educating students and maintaining our facilities as compared to how much time you spend dealing with the financing and the changing in the financing and how to deal with Act 127. And maybe if you could compare this year to prior years, I'd appreciate that as well.
Nicole, can I go first? Because I've talked to you about it.
Absolutely.
This has sucked up all our time, Andrew. It's never been this confusing. I don't think it's ever been this broken. But this is all just about all Nicole and I have done for weeks. It really does influence my ability to get out into schools and work with our teachers and our educational support staff and principals, because this is all we have been doing. And it seems like there's some emergency that comes up every day that we got to respond to. And trying to communicate this effectively is almost impossible because it's so confusing.
I will just echo and agree completely with what John said.
Diane?
Yeah, I don't know if Tara is also waiting to answer to we may be talking about the same thing. I think though that if this had been a different year, if we didn't have the Act 127, if we were just to say, okay, everything is pretty much the same as it was, what would be in our budget for this year? And I think it's important just to clarify that what would be in our budget is everything that we have now, but probably not all of the facilities requests. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. So facilities requests, if there's an urgent need, we might be either using our capital reserve fund or we might be going out to bond. Obviously, when there is a time that the boiler fails, then we have to deal with that, more or less on the immediate. So if we didn't have any of the facilities in there, we would still be looking at a percentage rate increase of about what, Nicole and John?
8.46.
I'm sorry, say that?
I got an 8.46 on the floor here.
Okay.
Kevin.
So I just want to be clear that I think that that's important for everyone to have that kind of a number already in their heads. The information that we were getting from some of the other boards when we were having the discussion just now with the VSBA is that there are other districts, not ones you would expect to be totally disadvantaged, as we've pointed out already, who were talking about numbers, up to like 45%. I don't even know the math that goes into this. But the bottom line that one of the things that we mentioned was that it feels as though it was that the modeling was not executed well. It was actually kind of, I call it irresponsible to not have foreseen that with this kind of a formula that they were creating, that this would have happened. So we're definitely all in a mess, as it were, right now. And even if we were to take back today or tomorrow at a warned meeting, all of the facilities pieces, everything else would need to stay in there just to give good education to our students the way we have done in previous years. So I just wanted to make that point.
Can I
Thank
ask one
you.
clarifying question on the 8.46?
Sure.
That's 8.46 total dollars, right? So last year's budget to this year's budget?
Yeah.
Not based on any equalized pupil,
Right.
that's just a pure number, 8.46 increase. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yes. Tara, did you have something else you wanted to add? Because I told you I'd come back to you and I totally sent the conversation a different way from the VSBA meeting about this.
Good.
We'll do the other VSBA stuff. It's not
Could I-
127 later, but
Just before we go in a different direction, I noticed the
Well,
committee member had.
yeah, but we're staying on 127 still. This
Okay.
I took it away from Tara when she said I had more stuff to add before.
I would be open for a community comment during this agenda item, given.
Thank you. That was
If you-
going to be my question after this.
And I'll be quiet.
Thanks.
Thanks. So Diane and I represent our area of Chittenden County with the VSBA. We were called to a special meeting at 5 o'clock today. And what the VSBA did was they essentially just created space. So the board of directors of the VSBA could have, it was less of a conversation and more of a, here's what we're doing, here's what we've heard from our communities. So it's nothing that we haven't talked about. Nobody said anything new or surprising. We heard a lot of the other regional reps talk about what their budget numbers are at, that they haven't passed a budget yet, that some of them, you know, have to wait until they go to the floor on town meeting day to, you know, have their budget passed and then remove things from their budget if they're asked to. What I think is interesting is, so we took this 5%, we added in that $5 million, one-time things, right? Like, this is not gonna be a reoccurring thing in our budget. Some of the other districts are talking about replacing these positions because the ESSER funds are not there. So that would be a reoccurring salary line item in their budgets.
I'm just going to explain what you just said with a little bit more detail.
Good.
When schools in the country got money from the federal government during COVID to augment districts because students were having so many social emotional issues, because we had to transfer to online, because there were just so many moving pieces, right? Schools used that money to add positions. It was supposed to be temporary. And what you're saying is there are a lot of schools in Vermont that are making those positions permanent.
Yeah.
So that is also a reason that costs are increasing.
Yes. Yeah. And a few of the folks on the call were also talking about, we already talked about salary increases, where we are with our contracts. A number of them are bringing their staff up to more of a standard living wage to be an educator, because they were talking about how they couldn't hire anybody because the convenience store down the road was paying more than a teacher in their school was being paid. So those were the kinds of things that were discussed. Also, again, Diane and I didn't learn anything new. But Sue Siglowski did talk about how the VASBO and the Superintendent's Association have been doing a lot of work with Representative Kornheiser in the last week, which is why we've got that letter where they're now going to be collecting data so they can make more accurate I'm about to say accusation, but it's not accusation, right? Like, I feel like a lot of that letter was put together on, well, I've heard this in the community, right? No legitimate data yet. They are looking for people to testify on Thursday afternoon, whether that's school board members, superintendents, or whomever, to testify on behalf of our school boards on Thursday afternoon. And they're looking for witnesses from districts to discuss why we're adding that 5% into our budgets. And then John, I guess they said that you as a superintendent will have received a survey. Then the VSA and VASBO were requesting legislators to give more information about what this reimagined tax review board is. And Diane can pick up where I left off.
Okay. Yeah, I'm less concerned about that because it's all ideas right now, right? It's not facts. But Diane, if you wanted to add to that, and Kevin, I'm not ignoring you. So we have to do some procedural things before we invite you to speak. So go ahead, Diane.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the one thing that they were asking, I'd asked Sue if she had a tally already of how many districts were advantaged versus how many were finding themselves disadvantaged. And she said not yet, because that survey was just going out right now. And so once they would get that information, I think that that would be brought to all the groups who are involved to figure out, you know, how they could have sort of gone wrong in their calculations on how this modeling was going to help. So there's that piece of it. And also a lot of other districts were more alarmed at what was happening with the CLA, and were also more fearful that they were going to change anything with the yield, because all of our calculations are not just straight money budgeting things, but they're from that process, that dance between all those different factors that get tallied together to create this other number that then turns into our tax rate, which will be established much later in the year in terms of the final tax bill. So yes, and they thought they really wanted chair and superintendent pairs to go and testify for the hearing. Those are the things I wanted to add.
Okay. We are having a discussion here about Act 27. We did have a community member earlier in the community comments, had some comments about Act 127, and that community member would like to speak on the topic again. Is the board open to that? Great, thank you. So Kevin, we don't normally have community comments, community members comment during other parts of the meeting, but we would like to hear from you now.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Chairperson. And I do appreciate this conversation. It's been enlightening, and I understand that it's a very difficult conversation. I just wanted to add I've heard words like confusing, broken, not understandable, in disarray going on from the state. And that was not the messaging that I got from the letter I received last week. Honestly, it was really the opposite of that. The messaging I got was encouraging. I think there was a once in a lifetime opportunity was a phrase that was used. And I feel like it's important to communicate honestly when you're communicating with members of the district, not just the positives, but also the challenges that you're facing. Representative Granning, or Chairperson Granning, if you've been working on this since December, you've clearly known that it was in disarray. I know the governor, the Joint Fiscal Office, this letter that came out on Friday are all examples of folks that have been addressing this. And so I just wanted to mention, in your communications with the public, I think it's important not just to talk about the benefits, but also the challenges that you're facing, so that voters are aware that this isn't a cut and dried issue. And what a difficult issue to try to wrap your head around when the goalposts are moving weekly. I think you should say that. That's all.
That's really helpful, and we appreciate that. We were trying to come up with the right tone for the letter and trying to keep it as simple as possible. And in a situation that is this confusing, we probably missed that mark very clearly. So really appreciate that feedback. Thank you. Think we've covered everything at this point. Yes. Okay. If folks
Edie,
want to
could I
talk about
just-
this.
Can I just say
Yes,
one
John.
brief thing is that if we do get some new information, and I'll be working with you on this, Edie, I would encourage the board to, you know, if we can, to get back together and reconsider, or at least look at any new information that is really solid from the state. That makes sense?
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe
you don't,
noon on
you-
Friday, would noon on Friday for a 30-minute special meeting be something that
Yeah.
folks could do?
Could it be after 2?
Could it be after 2?
It's, sorry.
That's all right.
I'm
We
doing
look.
testing on Friday. so-
Yeah, me too. I'll be in slow motion all day.
you know, if we don't have any new information, then there's not much we can do. But if we do get something from the state that says, this is what we're doing, you know, school districts are going to be penalized or negatively influenced in this way, it's going to happen. You know, I think we would want to at least have a conversation about that and talk about, do we want to do anything different? That's it, Edie.
4 to 4:30 on Friday? I don't know. I'm just throwing something out there for folks to, if you let me know if that's a possibility. Go ahead, Alex. That doesn't work for me, but.
I'm sorry, I came in a little late and maybe this was discussed, but can you just remind us of the timeline? Like, what are the gates we have to get through to make this all work in time for a town meeting? Assuming that there's, like, in what scenario A is no change, we just move forward with what we've put together, and scenario B would be some sort of shuffle with the continuously emerging information.
Yeah, so, normally we would have this done already. We are already late for getting information to the towns. We have 45 days, right, that our warning has to be out before town meeting day, John, but that doesn't take into account getting ballots printed, getting warnings printed, and all of those other pieces. So Friday is really pushing it, and that means that only partial information is going to the towns.
Yeah, we
However-
don't want to cut it too close.
So it's the timing is horrible. The timing, like, had this been done in December, the timing would have been horrible, and we're now 4 weeks later than that. So, yeah.
If the timing's horrible, why are we forcing a vote on the budget? Just don't.
What's the protocol around? Do we
So-
have to pass a budget on that either?
If we don't pass a budget on town meeting day, we incur additional costs for a new vote. And then the sentiment, once towns vote no on budgets, it gets harder and harder to pass a budget. So we don't want to set up a situation where our town can't pass the budget that we presented to them. That sets us up for lack of trust and all kinds of other pieces. So we really need to be careful about that.
And if we don't pass a budget, it reverts to
80% of the budget that we passed for this year. So
Say that again?
the law says if your town doesn't pass a budget, then you have 80% of the previous year's budget to work to use. That's your budget for the next calendar year.
But what if my town passes it and your town doesn't pass it, but Kevin's town
One-
passes
We
it?
commingle.
We look at, okay.
Okay.
Usually works.
So then, okay. So this is where Chinese district.
for one.
Go ahead, Allison.
I guess I'm sorry I missed this front of this meeting, but I besides some like very stern finger wagging, what's changed here? Like, they haven't given us any more information. This has sucked the life out of our administrative staff who have other priorities. And so we're going to continue to scramble to hit some moving target. It's like, you know, they've told us they're disappointed in how we've dealt with this. Well, we have dealt with it within the parameters that were laid out in front of us. I mean, you know, this is like saying your banker says to you, well, I could have gotten you a 10% interest rate, but I think it makes better sense to just go for 5 right now. I mean, we're just trying to do what we can do with the hand that's been dealt to us. So I don't understand why we would do some sort of about face and risk the trust of our public, the constituents. It just feels like it's very shaky, and it's a time suck for our administrators. I'd be very much in favor of just holding steady until we got some more reasonable information from the state, some direction.
Andrew?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better than Allison did. You know, there isn't going to be any law passed between now and Friday, as you were talking about. Even with waiving all the rules down there in the State House, the governor likes to take a few days to review legislation. I don't see anything officially changing in the next few days. I think we should leave well enough alone. Certainly, none of us are happy with where we are, but I think continuing to run around hoping that we can make things better when we don't know what's going to happen this week, much less what the legislature is going to do after everybody's passed their budgets in April or May. I think we should leave well enough alone.
Diane?
Yeah, the one thing I was going to say is that what I think the message is that all the board needs to be alert for a special meeting notice. And so at that point, you know, you'll do the doodle poll. We'll take care of figuring out the best time and try to make it work. Number one. Number two is I think this is what Kevin was trying to say, is that we have used town meeting day as our date to do the school budget. And if it is totally in our community's best interest that we delay that, I believe there is a process where we can do that. John or someone else can chime in and let us know. We know that there are other towns that vote on their school budget at a later time. We don't want to go too late because we know it inconveniences things like hiring for next year, signing contracts, etc. But we do have a little bit of leeway, even if it's inconvenient.
Ethan?
I think I'm fairly well in agreement that we continue to move forward. I think, again, the budget that was put together is a sound budget. It addressed a lot of things. Nothing is sort of pie in the sky. I think it's important for us to recognize, though, that whatever increases happen, both in our district and across the state, are going to have a very real impact on a lot of people. And I think that part, that's the hardest to grapple with. Like, again, just thinking about those that are struggling already to put food on their table, to pay their bills, to be able to do the things. That's the community member that I'm feeling for most right now. And I think the message is not necessarily at our district level, it is at a state level. It is a legislative and executive branch issue to deal with and to grapple with. And what are the real solutions that we as a district can put forward? Like, we are doing this, again, for, I think, all of the right reasons. The impact is going to be vast, but what happens next, and how as a school do we best support our community members to be able to weather the storm that is coming up?
I'm not hearing anybody say anything different. Am I understanding that the sentiment of the board is to keep going in the path that we've set? Okay. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the robust discussion. It's not easy. And if something changes, we will reach out. We'll let you know that we need to get together and do something different. But I think at this point, it's our job to really be clear and transparent with the community on what a difficult situation we're in and how complicated the issue is. We'll do more with putting together FAQs or some other kind of a situation with that. so that there's more information on the website, make it easier for community members to understand what's going on here.
I don't think Jeff
Pardon?
ever addressed that comment.
Okay. I didn't see. Okay. All right. Board vacancy update. Who wants to join the school board?
What a follow-up.
Maybe we should have done this one first. Katie.
Yeah. We sent out a communication about, when, where, how, who, how much, in order to be a candidate on the ballot for school board. And, I don't know, somebody had a call out to find out who has collected anything from any of the town clerks. When I talked to, Linda on Friday in Richmond, I was the only person.
I'm sorry, I left the last topic a little bit too soon, and I just have one last thing that I
Sure,
really
please
need to say on
say
Act
this.
127. It's easiest to address frustration and anger in any way that you can personally impact, right? That's our school budget. That's the way that people can personally impact this whole frustration, right? And voting down our school budget doesn't help our district and truly doesn't help the state outcome, right? This has to be addressed as a big picture item. This has to be addressed statewide. This has to be addressed as how do we fund schools in the state? We have a really good district. We have great outcomes. We have a great culture for our students, for our teachers here. And doing something drastic here is not going to change how schools get funding statewide. So I think that it's important to support our district, and I think it's important to make sure that we can continue what we've grown here, right? What we have here. And at the same time, help to work on statewide problems and figure out what we can do to fix the broken system that we have. Because saying no to a local school budget feels like you're doing the right thing, and it turns out it doesn't make a big picture change. When we saved money by repurposing the Underhill ID school and not renting space for administration and adding preschools into the building at Underhill ID, so better community, all of that, more money into the district, less money on rent, we saved money for the state. Our local taxpayers didn't get a break from that. It came out of the state budget. If you look back and you'll see, what happens here doesn't impact the bigger picture on its own. I want us to really be thinking about it as a big picture that way and not just this budget. So, okay, sorry, now I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm having a little bit of a reaction and it was a little slow.
Yeah, no.
So
And-
please join our school budget, our school boards.
So, yeah, I would love to hear from any other towns. But otherwise, we're looking at quite a few vacancies. I've seen on other front porch forums that there have been town clerks stating that they haven't received any interest at all in the position, meaning nobody has even inquired.
I think that's not just the school board position. I think
You're
there's
right.
multiple boards that are struggling to recruit.
Volunteerism is not something.
Sure. I think that there will be a couple of people running in Huntington. Is that accurate? For the single position that's open there.
I mean, I think, I haven't seen any petitions circulating, and I've talked to a few people, but I've not heard anyone saying they're getting their papers to voters to get signed.
And Thursday's the deadline?
Yeah, Thursday at 5 p.m.
What about
think Heidi's most recent post.
Right, explicitly like highlighted and asterisk.
Yeah, okay.
What about Jericho? He's there. right?
We have one petition that I'm aware of for this open seats. I don't know if there have been any, last I checked.
I got an update today. The only two that I was aware of was Susan Lillick's and Katie's.
Those are the only ones that,
Mary Radigan.
Great.
looked
The
into,
only
but
petitions that have been.
that I'm aware of, yeah.
Yeah, no problem, everyone.
Andrew
Great.
said earlier that there was somebody interested in Fulton,
Correct.
but I don't know.
But it's not, the
if
petition
the
is not
petition has
completed.
been.
okay.
Can you get right in?
2 days,
Wrote
3
in,
days.
Right?
Yeah.
Written in,
Yeah.
written in, oh.
Yeah, right,
And
and it's
who's the
complicated.
I think they have 12 signatures to go.
Just about an English teacher.
Oh, they do?
Okay.
Oh, great,
English
so they're
teacher.
close, they're getting, great.
Wait, you're saying somebody.
Bolton, they have.
They're working on their thing. I think they have 12 signatures to go.
Okay.
Well, not 30.
So Underhill,
Yeah.
Jericho,
40, submitted 40.
Underhill, Jericho, Gail's gonna run again, so Gail will have no problem getting his petition signed, and if someone runs against Gail, then we'll have a couple of people running. So. Okay, so great. And I don't, is anybody here watching because they wanted to join the board? I don't see. Probably not.
Well, and then just for the recording, again, there is a front porch forum post for how to get your petition, when to get it in. So go to your town clerk, get your petition, get it signed. They'll tell you how many signatures, and submit it by 5 p.m. on Thursday, 29th.
The 25th.
25th, sorry, this Thursday. I wasn't looking at the calendar. Yeah, this Thursday.
Okay.
And they need to be registered in that town.
Registered voters, not just residents.
Registered voters.
Which is amazing when you start talking to people you love and care about.
And did you have a comment?
Of course. So, if we don't have anybody in the position, that doesn't count against us for quorum.
We don't know that yet.
If we have somebody in the position, because they were doing a favor to their community and said, go ahead and write me in, and then they don't come to our meetings, to me, that's worse than having an empty chair. So I think we also, we want to make sure that people who are interested in being on the board are able to make that commitment and be engaged as board members, or don't put your name in there just because no one else is going to, because it hurts us.
Yes, that's really important. If you don't have what did you say, 7 to 18 hours a month to
Yeah,
spend,
I
depending
went back
on
and
the
forth
month.
about those numbers, but yeah, I was pretty explicit about how much of a time commitment. I didn't want to just scare people away, because then again, it's based on your interest too, right? Like,
Yeah.
in your committee engagement.
And a willingness to serve.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what you said, spot on, like, don't just be a warm body, you need to be an active body.
We have work to do, clearly. So, okay, thank you. I think we have covered that one. Appoint John Milazzo as the clerk. So last week, Pat resigned as the district clerk. The district clerk's job is to. Pat, why don't you tell us what the
Yeah, that's
clerk's job is to do? She's not used to being called on during.
Preparing lessons for tomorrow.
Right.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Pat.
Initially billed as sign some documents once the board have signed them, which is handy when I'm already at the meeting. The district clerk also oversees and signs off on the vote count after the town meeting. So it involves a few hours on that evening on the Tuesday to work with the people who know the systems and get the vote counted and then certify it and call it in.
Thank you.
Does this mean Pat is still taking minutes?
Minutes has nothing to do with being the clerk.
Yes, it
Great.
does.
Oh, yeah,
So Pat will still be taking minutes at the meeting. Yes. She's still serving our district in lots. I think she said 8 other capacities. So she's just stepping away from one of them. John has found us somebody to appoint for the rest of the term, which is just till town meeting day, and that's John Milazzo, and he is a Richmond resident, and he used to be on the school board for many, many years. He was the chair of the board. He was helpful in merging all the different towns into one district. And he is going to step into that role. And then John also be on the ballot for clerk for the next year? Question mark?
I'm hoping. We will have a treasurer and a moderator on there. We got the
Okay.
signature.
So we're hopeful for that. So can I guess I'm doing discussion before a motion.
Do we have any precedent that the board is able to appoint a district officer?
Yes, we've appointed, yes. We have had times when the treasurer we've had to appoint a treasurer and a moderator.
Yep.
So if somebody drops out, it's the board's responsibility to appoint in the interim.
So I don't have a letter from John, right? There wasn't a letter or anything. This is a kind of a last minute thing, but he is interested and willing, and it is for almost 2 months. And I need a motion to appoint John Milazzo as the MMUUSD clerk for the remainder of this term.
So moved.
Thank you. Heather moved, Diane seconded. Is that okay?
I'm second then.
Excellent. Great, thank you. Any further discussion on this topic? All in favor, give me a thumb or an eye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, unanimous passing. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Yes. Derek, are you still awake here?
I was thinking, how do you follow this with a little bit of joy?
Not a lot of joy. They've already done it. If it's only a little, then you're not allowed to talk. I need a lot of joy.
So can I start just reflecting on the discussion here? Just thank you for everything you're doing for our school district, because it is so hard. And so thank you to you all. Adding on to that, if you want to visit anytime, please come to Smilie. Come and walk around and see what's happening here, because there is some amazing stuff going on in our schools. Every day, teachers come in and just love being in here doing their job. So please come and visit. And that goes to community members as well. Please come in and see what's going on in your schools. And I know teachers will welcome you into their classrooms as well. So I'm going to run through a few things that have been going on at Smilie. Please ask questions as you go. And Abby, you were here at Smilie, weren't you?
I was.
Yeah. Sid will be so delighted that you were here. So I want to start with you, Abby. What have you noticed in this room that is different?
I mean, it's a lot smaller than I remembered. I mean, not much. It still has the same energy that I really loved as a kid. And yeah, the same vibe about it.
So I am going to, please, all of your friends that came to Smilie, bring them back as well, because we want to bring alumni back in. But the elevator that was there for, I think, John, over 30 years, we got rid of in the summer, which actually created a lot more space for us. And there was shelving all along here, which exposed this mural that was painted over 30 years ago. And parents have come in and gone, I remember painting that. And there's some stories behind them as well. So what I want to do is bring parents in, have a photograph in front of the mural, as many of them as possible, and then have our students update it, because we've got new murals outside, we've got murals in the gym, but keeping a little bit of history helps create that sense of community. So that was one of the things that happened over the summer. We also put a fence outside by Joyner Brook, which created another outdoor learning space. And Andrew, thank you for being part of that and helping us support that with the town, because part of the backland is town land. But what it's done is defined the school boundary as well for us. And there's been a really nice addition. So we've been doing work outside to create more learning space outside. There's a big drive amongst the teachers. You'll see in the school, in the report, that to take our learning outside and use what we have here. We are in such an incredible place, and teachers are using it to utilize for learning in science, literacy, all learning, but we're doing lots of it outside now. So moving on from that, inside of school, big drive to have more collaboration from teachers. And I know that sounds crazy in a small school, but many bigger schools can meet in grade teams. We have to meet in vertical teams, but using teachers' experience in different areas. So we've created time for those teachers to meet. And one of the mindsets that really driven those meetings, first of all, is to be database, student-based, student-centered, but they want to make sure that students aren't getting missed. We're very good at identifying students at the top end, students who aren't or are struggling to engage or struggling academically, but this group is really also focusing on students in the middle that are missing certain skill sets. So, and some really exciting work is coming out of it. And also the district's implemented STAR screeners, and we're coming up to the second round of STAR testing. I'm really excited to see the longitudinal data that we start getting, looking at growth with students, because sometimes we see patterns of growth, big patterns of growth, but also it's those small bits of growth that we miss. And so hopefully this longitudinal data that we start collecting through the screeners is really going to help us, and also identify gaps in learning. So teachers are coming together to look at all of that. Multi-tier systems of support. It's Smilie. We've seen some real successes with a couple of students who had, previously had been struggling. And I sat in a meeting the other day and talking about a student accessing some work. And it's the work that it was going back to skills that were missed because of previous behaviors that we can now address because of supports that are in for that student. And the growth we've seen has just been phenomenal. And that reflects on what we, as a district, we're driving the multi-tier systems of support, identifying the weaknesses, allowing for growth, building community, and then targeting the skills that have been missed. To then, for us, preparing students ready to go into middle school, to be learners. School safety has been a big driver across the district. At Smilie, we've every year we've done evacuations down to the fire department, which is we've closed Route 2, walked all the students down there, been excellent. I've just recently had conversations with the town about flooding. Flooding hit Bolton really hard this summer, and some of our families were affected heavily by it. What we've been looking at is if there was a flooding incident, how would we react as a school, especially because this is an evacuation centre. So I've been working with the town recently about that, and so school safety. So those things are outside of where we've been focused a lot around the run, hide, fight type scenarios. For Smilie School, we've been looking a little bit wider around school safety. And the other big drive here is building Smilie, but continuing to build Smilie as a centre of community. I think it's so important for all of our schools. for people to feel welcome in our schools, for community members to feel welcome in our schools. That helps them when it comes to budget time, but also in many of our rural communities, Smilie is one of those. These places are important. There's some happy memories, but there's also those, it's a place where we can gather. So that's a big drive for here at Smilie as well. Questions?
I have one, it's more like logistical. Like, what is the flood risk of Smilie? And I know the river is right back there.
Sorry, can you say that again?
I'm sorry, do you know the flood risk for Smilie? Given that flood
Yeah,
risk
it's
must be
actually
potential
interesting.
future?
Joyner Brook itself isn't the challenge to flooding, because like the potholes and all areas going up, there's valves and there's sort of water floodplains higher up. The biggest threat to flooding for Smilie is actually from the Winooski up. So and so if we were to evacuate, we don't want to be evacuating that way. We want to be evacuating up to G. Armstrong's land, up to higher ground.
Other questions? I think thank you. So you're welcome. Go. Stay.
Thank you.
You have an early start in the morning and you're here much later than we anticipated, so.
If we have a meeting here all the time, will we have cookies?
Precedent has been set.
I'm sorry, Joe.
John would like the meeting to be here. It's a good place for
Yeah,
him.
very true.
Thank you, Derek.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Superintendent report, Andrew.
All right, thank you. So I'll draw out a couple of things in here. The first one is that the new director of special education has been selected, and it's Jen Cote of Underhill. And so we're very, very excited about that. If you don't know her well, she has a strong background in special education, but also just in curriculum instruction in general. So I work very closely with her all the time on a variety of projects. We have a group right now focused on kind of our broader literacy shifts, and she's also on there. So that is, I'm very excited about that because I'll be working a lot with her on a lot of big projects. So that's great. And now I don't have the details, but they're already working on all the components to hire for the Underhill Central School principal job. So that's good.
I was going to say, before you change that, so if a board member wants to serve on that search committee, we do like to have a board member serving on these committees, and also in your email today, board members and also community members in the Underhill community have received a form to fill out for the things that are important for them in this new position. So
yeah, thank you. I was supposed to say that. We talked about the clerk position. I'm not going to talk much about the budget. Solar eclipse. This is definitely on everyone's radar. So solar eclipse, yes. Most, if not all, districts in kind of this area have made that Monday in April a early release day. What we're going to be doing is we have an early release day already set for the Wednesday, the 10th, and so we're just moving that to the Monday. And so we'll be putting something out to all the staff and students so that they kind of know what that day is going to look like. But the goal is that we can have everyone go home before anything, people start going out to see it and the solar eclipse starts, so that we can just do that as a safety piece and get everyone home before the solar eclipse happens. So that is something that we've decided. We've got that. We'll put a message out. Something else that's not in here. So back in, I want to say it was October, I believe I used some ESSER funds for this, but we purchased solar eclipse glasses for all students and staff. And so we'll be handing those out sometime before the solar eclipse. So it's definitely, we get asked about it a lot. And I think this is probably the best way forward to make sure that, you know, we're keeping everybody safe and folks also have an opportunity to see, you know, a once in a lifetime, you know, event.
So before you move on from that, Monday, April 18th?
8th.
Monday, April 8th, there will be a full solar eclipse and our area is in prime viewing.
Prime, yeah.
Prime viewing.
Totality.
Like this is, I mean, people are, and so this is one of the reasons why we're kind of making a big deal about it is,
Hotels are filling up.
yeah, is people are coming from all across the country, potentially the world,
To Vermont,
to Vermont. To see this
In early April.
in early April, right?
Clear skies, guaranteed.
Yes, I make that joke all the time.
We have a board meeting that day.
Oh, the board meeting will be 3 hours after the eclipse.
You'll be in totality still.
But what I also hear is you're sending the children home with these glasses, so parents are able to borrow said
Yes,
glasses.
that is a possibility, indeed.
I had no idea this was happening. Right, I lived in the dark most of the time. You're already
going to the
And also related to this, we are, I've been working with Lisa Windhausen, who is our science instructional coach and also a teacher at Browns River. And she's trying to pull together some activities and other events ahead of time related to kind of astronomy and the solar eclipse. So we're trying to leverage it as best we can as a learning opportunity, hoping it's not going to be cloudy that day so that we can see it. Fingers crossed.
Can I ask one clarifying question? Half day versus early release.
Sorry, yeah, pretty much the same thing. So early release days, we have one of those each month. And so we're not adding anything new. We're just taking something that we already had and we're just moving it to that Monday.
Right.
So,
but they're different release times.
so that is a good logistical question. I don't know what that time would be exactly. If we would stand by our early release times or if we'd make a new time. But yes, my guess would be we would just stick with our early release times because we have protocols for that already.
Perfect.
But I can't double clarify that.
The eclipse isn't scheduled to begin until 3.
Correct. So there's a good chunk of time before anything goes down.
No, that's the beginning.
Let's begin it.
So if you're a parent, check your notification.
Yep,
That's what I was curious. When will the communities be notified about that?
soon. A date has not been set. This is really the first kind of piece about it because John's been trying to figure that out. And so we will send that out soon.
Okay.
Don't have a date.
No, that's great. I just didn't know. We can answer those questions should they come to us.
I would
with
say
that
probably
information.
once John and I have it 100% solidified, we will start to put some things in Roots and Wings and district happenings and probably just kind of keep it there on a rolling basis so folks are just apprised of it. Because again, as I said, it has come up quite a bit for folks.
Thank you.
Pat, do you have a clarifying question?
I do. Do you want that to go into the minutes or hold off?
Oh, it can go in the minutes.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Thanks.
So solar eclipse. Also, there's the last day of school procedure in here. So John had kind of a plan for how to approach that because in years past, it's been very difficult. You know, I can speak for myself as a parent as well, not knowing exactly when that date is going to be. And for those of you who have kids, probably know that camps fill up very quickly. And so in order to support families with kind of making their summer plan, particularly around camps, what John wanted to do is have this protocol here, which he'll put into the February district happenings that really helps to solidify that date. And then if for some reason we have to have extra days, we have a backup option where we can ask for a waiver, but we wanted to set June 18th as that firm date so that families can prepare for that, which I think makes a lot of sense. Edie, do you want to speak any more to that or?
Just that we decided as a board, I believe, that we wouldn't have school on Juneteenth, which is June 19th. And so the 18th as the last possible school day. I don't know that it will be the firm last day of school. Maybe this year it will because we've already had a certain number of snow days.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't speak for future years.
Yeah.
So wait, I'm sorry. This says without any more snow days, June 18th. So if we have more snow days,
Then-
it would
It would
still
still
be
be June
It would
18th,
still be.
and we're gonna have to get a waiver.
Waiver,
Okay.
exactly.
we talked about this, and I believe the policy that we voted on was that if we had, because we have 175 school days as a district,
178.
175 is required by the state. And if we had 175 by Friday the 15th.
Nope.
Then in alternate years.
Yep.
No, it's not much of a problem. We didn't.
Nope.
Okay.
Okay. Fair question.
Any other questions on the last day of school piece?
Andrew, is this last day of school? Yeah? No?
Come on, back me up on you. It happened.
So I'll kind of keep running through. So there's also the PCB testing. We don't know anything about it yet. So the results could take upwards of 15 weeks. Once we have new information, John will bring that forward. There's also been a lot of work around stormwater mitigation. And so John's kind of spelled out the pieces in there. Basically, there's a 3-acre rule. So if there's 3 acres of, ground that isn't, permeable, there's certain rules that have to be in place. So John's been working on that component. There's a policy governance training this weekend that Katie, Tara, Heather, Edie, and myself will be attending to learn more about policy governance. And then, yeah, I think those are the big things from the report. So from that, were there any other questions that folks had related to the superintendent report?
A couple.
Andrew, did you have a question about something else since you had your hand up earlier? No? Yeah.
No, I was going to comment and then I didn't want to, and I've been having technical issues here. I keep raising my hand when I don't want to.
Okay. All right, Kevin, go ahead.
Like procedurally in the report, like with the last day of school, I think John wrote, just trying to find it. If there is no strong objection from the board, I would like to publish it. I don't know if that's appropriate for a superintendent report to ask for the board's feedback, because it's like, that should probably be an agenda item if you're looking for feedback from us. Otherwise, it's like kind of just words on the page, and I'm not sure, wasn't sure how to respond.
Nor do I. Got it.
Can I respond to that?
You can have the floor in a minute. I have 2 more questions on the PCB testing results. Are we going to talk about any what-if scenarios before those come, or just deal with it at that time? I would prefer to kind of think through how we might deal with whatever's about to come rather than wait. That's just that's how I like to operate.
I'll bring that comment to John.
That's just me. That's
I would
just me. So
bring
it's more
that to the chair
more
of
for
the
you.
Finance and Facilities Committee, and then I can direct you to testimony to the Education Committee that you can watch, and that will prepare you all you need to be.
Well, otherwise I don't want to see the results if we don't know what we're going to do. And the last question I had
It's very prescriptive.
was,
They lay out.
They tell you what you have to
There's
do.
not really a lot of options.
Yeah.
Oh, and I went
Very
through that at the BSBA.
well, I also want to understand the intent, so I don't get a letter that they're telling me that I also didn't understand the intent of what they're asking for.
Ouch.
The Champlain Valley Superintendent's Association, that's a thing? It's like a real association, all capital letters? There's a
Dues and everything.
Where are you saying that exactly?
the total
It's Chittenden
solar
County
eclipse.
Superintendent.
Unknown. I'd have to check on that for you. I don't know the exact naming.
The
organization.
The way it was written, like it's an entity that has structure and governance, and because it's all capital letters, and I was intrigued by that because I'd like to also understand if there's a Champlain Valley School Board Association that might better represent our needs versus the one we have in Vermont.
Well, I can tell you this. So for instance, in the Director of Curriculum realm of things, we have the Vermont Curriculum Leaders Association, and then we also have the Champlain Curriculum Coordinators, I think, Association. I forget the exact name we use. It varies around. So if the thing you're talking about, that could be the regional group, which is under the umbrella of the VSA. And so that's how a lot of these organizations work. So it's the same thing with the VCSEA, which is the Vermont Council of Special Education Administrators. They have their broader state level piece, and then and it's kind of,
Okay, so this might be like a subgroup within the Vermont Superintendent
Correct.
Association.
It's under that umbrella.
A regional group. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Great. Started.
I might.
Katie, did you have a comment?
I had asked John questions about the end of school date last time that we had a leadership meeting, and he mentioned that he did ask us to read over this policy in August, and he didn't receive any feedback. So I just wanted to note that.
Right, again, if he asked the same way, that might be well.
Sure, that's what I'm noting.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this is the school calendar, and we have delegated the school calendar to the administration. So
Which we have to approve though.
I don't know, we don't anymore.
We did, but not now.
That would
For
be my
years.
response, which is I don't think
Yes.
it's a board issue to take up.
Yes.
But-
Yes. I think this is are you all aware that this is the new policy? I want to make sure you are all aware, and that's probably how it should have been listed. Yep.
That's all I got.
Anyone
Any other
else?
questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yes, go ahead, Allison.
Edie, I think pertinent to this discussion as well is the start date in September or at the end of August, still TBD. And as one of the parents thinking about care this summer, I had reached out to get some clarification about that. And what I learned was that there's still coordination happening with other districts, and that there's also some consideration at the state level for potentially a unified state calendar for schools in the future, which I think would just be so helpful. But just to get my little piece in, it's very, very helpful to have clarity at the end of the school year, and also will be very useful to have clarity for when the school year starts for those of us who are rushing on that February 1 deadline to get care lined up.
Yeah, and so normally the school calendar isn't finalized until April, which I know feels really late. And also normally we start school the last week of August. So those are just normalies. If Labor Day is really early, then we start earlier. But I don't know when Labor Day is this year.
I thought it was the
Second?
Wednesday before Labor Day.
Usually. Yeah.
Wednesday's a solar.
It is usually here at the high school, right, at the high school, the Tuesday before, at the other schools, the Wednesday before Labor Day.
We still don't know,
But we-
as
but
we
it's-
just discussed.
yeah.
If it plays out like it has in the past, the first day of school would be Wednesday, August 28th.
And there's never any childcare in the last 8 days of summer.
I'm on free.
Okay.
They do. Lord of the Flies.
One calendar piece that I'm curious as to where our purview sits, in the sense of as Allison brought up, a statewide or even a area-wide, because as I understand it, we are somewhat aligned with Franklin County, not necessarily aligned with Addison County. Those are close neighbors. I don't really know about Washington County, but CTE is a factor that I think a big driver in why we would have a unified calendar. Not necessarily because we're crossing across districts or counties to access tech center services, but I do know that that's a big driver for our district to be able to have the same calendar as Burlington, same calendar as South Burlington. I think the one thing that is still off, and just, I don't know where this conversation could go, or I think it has had some conversation, is just on those early release days and lining those up, because what I did hear at the RAD meeting was that it was really challenging for the tech centers to have on Mondays, South Burlington students are half day, and on Wednesdays, MMU students are on a half day, and on Thursdays, another school. So I think there is an opportunity to further align that and also help with all of the things around. So for our students.
Earlier today, wearing my legislative hat, I was in a meeting with the central, what did you call it? Champlain Valley Superintendents Association, which is part of the BSA, and we talked, I asked that exact question because they are advocating for a statewide calendar. And I said, in my world, in my mind, a statewide calendar includes all of those early release days and all of the professional learning days and all of the other things. And they said, well, that's not exactly what we mean. We mean the same start date, the same end date, the same vacation dates. So I think there's some advocacy work to be done to ensure it truly is a calendar that is more standardized, statewide, or at least countywide. But yes.
And it affects contracts.
Yes, it affects lots of things, including contracts. Yep. So it would have to be phased in probably. Anyway, we're not changing anything else today. Andrew.
For real or just?
Yeah, my understanding is that we have a countywide calendar, and that is what has driven some parts of our calendar, is that we have to be to some degree in sync with what goes on in Burlington and the other districts. We add to that, though, that we have a few extra school days compared to some other districts, so that's so we're never completely aligned. But my understanding is that we're supposed to have a lot of compatibility on a countywide basis. I don't think that's perfect. I think a discussion of a statewide calendar would be helpful as well.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has a different definition of what a community or a consolidated calendar is. And I think that that's part of the problem, because I think what we're calling right now as a countywide calendar is incredibly loose.
I think one example is the Monday before town meeting day is a vacation day for us, but not necessarily for every district in Chittenden County.
Well, and town meeting day.
Well,
Those
town
2
meeting
days.
day, I think is
Nope, both days.
right, yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, I think we're ready to move on, yes? Yes, okay, so, next on the agenda is discuss board compliance of governance management connection and governance process. We can push this. What I had hoped to do is talk about question by question with the board. We can start going through it and spend 15 minutes on it and then come back to it the next meeting with the rest of it. We didn't ask anybody to do the survey in advance, but so I am right now open to, do folks want to spend some time on this now? Do we want to just get through the rest of the agenda and push it to another meeting? Looking for thoughts from folks. It is 8:14. So we are, we do try to get out of here at 8:30 generally.
What is the next meeting's agenda look like if we look at that calendar? How full is that meeting?
Since my computer has decided to reboot, I don't have that open, and so I apologize. But I think that there is time for it. I think from the last time that I looked, all of my windows closed on me, and I don't know why. Yes, Susan.
My feeling is that that discussion is kind of all of a piece, and so trying to chop it up into multiple meetings doesn't feel like the most productive way of managing it. That's just great. My opinion, though.
Great. All right. So then we're going to give everyone homework because Susan is leading this. The homework is make sure that you're prepared to discuss the board survey questions. And if you see an area that isn't covered or unclear, come up with the rewording, or what doesn't have to be the exact rewording, but what you want to know, what we need to know as a board to get to the intent of the question, or what you think the intent of the question is, right? Like just be thinking really more in depth about that for the next meeting. So, yes, Kevin.
Can we complete this activity before town meeting?
Yes. Oh, we have to complete it before town meeting. That is, it has to happen at the next meeting.
The next meeting is just the wording of the questions, not how we feel about the results of the question.
No, we're gonna do all of it.
We're gonna do all of it. That's right. So reviewing the questions and answers.
The homework is, if you read this and say, this is ambiguous, I don't know what it means, come up with something that would be, and we'll talk about those other things too. But yeah, we're gonna spend some time on how are we doing things? What are the kinds of things that we need to be measuring? And are we doing a good job as a board? So we'll do all that. We got to get it all done before the board changeover thing happens. Yes. Yep. So plan, we might be a little longer at our next meeting, but we'll make it work. It'll be a lot longer.
Well, on February 12th, we only have Browns River Principals Report, 2.0 Global Constraint Monitoring, and then the Superintendent Evaluation.
Perfect.
And Act 127 modification.
Yeah. No.
Oh, right. Sorry, I missed
Okay,
that
so
part.
committee reports, Community Engagement Committee, do you have any?
We have not met since the last meeting. The community engagement that we have been working on is discussing how to talk to our community about the budget and the constraints of Act 127, and then also how to get the word out about getting a petition to be on the school board. And so this has brought to light a lot of things as far as what our procedural communication should be on such a mighty topic. And so that is something that we really want to develop so that we all know what to do. And so that the people who are joining the board can seamlessly respond to our community about important issues.
Great. And your next meeting is? The 5th of February.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Great. Tara,
March 11th.
EIB. Tara?
Oh, my goodness. We met on the 9th of January. We're digging into land acknowledgement. Andrew sent us some information. We talked about offering identity training during orientation for new board members. And then what more training for the full board would look like. And then we reviewed our goals. And then reviewed our goals. Great. I'm a horrible minute taker.
You have something to add?
Just a request, maybe, and that this we discussed this at one point, but just the concepts around our physical locations of the schools. And I think more than just a general land acknowledgement, but looking at these places that our schools sit on and the likely significance of these spaces, and that there is probably more to unpack there. So
The committee went there. We're trying to figure out how we can do something that doesn't burden our schools more. So we're trying to figure something out, but we have some really great ideas on what to do next. And
I keep that at the forefront.
but that is, yeah, yep, way up there.
great.
When we meet here, it's different than when we meet at UCS, and we need to, yeah. Or MMU.
Different.
The
Not the
location
same
is different, so
physical
the words
location.
are different. I feel it.
Significance.
I think it's, and maybe I'm missing it, but the actual significance of this location and what it meant to indigenous cultures.
And sure, you're talking about the specific, like, the notoriety of this particular spot?
It was likely an important gathering spot.
Sure.
And that there are some very, I think, explicit conversations. And I don't know necessarily if it's burdening our school community, but it's acknowledging as a larger community that we've appropriated land to build something and that there's no actual acknowledgement of the significant, the cultural and spiritual impact that that may have.
And I think that we can have
Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
Great,
Let's go.
great. Finance and facilities. Do we do more finance, Lisa?
Our next meeting is February 15th. It's the budget information meeting. And I'll also work with John to get results for the PCB testing to get that onto our budget as well. And I appreciate everybody's comments today, this evening as well. It was good to hear.
Great. Thank you. HR committee, we have nothing new since our last meeting, Brad? Nothing new. VSBA legislative, anything other than 127?
Yes.
You took great notes.
No. I got a price check and then I'm just
Sorry, I got my
struggling with
glasses.
the handwriting. No, at the VSBA added a last minute agenda item to our conversation this evening about changing the open meeting laws and requiring a hybrid meeting requirement, but and then defining advisory boards, which would be our committees, and those could remain online and remote all the time. But they defined it. Should probably just forward the document. It's a lot easier than me trying to like read this and tell you exactly what I'm remembering because I'm so focused on Act 127 right now. But there was a lot of discussion because members of the VSBA board, there were a number that were very opposed to requiring a hybrid meeting for things like town meeting day. And then Diane, right, we talked about the addition of like having the moderator and the clerk and the treasurer on the ballot, as opposed to having those people elected like at town meeting day, which is a shift we've already made. Yep. Yeah. Like we're doing all the things, but all of the other boards are not doing the things.
So, backing up, the legislature this year is looking at how to update open meeting law. Now that we are in a post-COVID, right, all of the open meeting, not all, many of the open meeting law requirements have been temporary and end at the end of this year. And so they're looking at what should that look like going forward. If you want to weigh in, Tara can, VSBA will be forwarding all the notes. Go ahead, Diane. And then that's, yeah, what we need to be thinking about.
I think the general gist of what the input was, or from the board members to Sue, was that they would like to preserve the ability for boards to make their own decisions on what works best for their community, whether that be the option of hybrid, but they did not like the idea of having that be mandated. Some did not have the technology to do it. Some did not have the tradition to do it. And so it just seemed like it would, in terms of representing the VSBA for that law, which I understand it had to do more with access for those who are differently abled. They just wanted to be able to preserve the local board's ability to choose what works best for their community. We'll see where it ends up, because that bill, as you recall, they struck the entire bill. They did a strike all and then rewrote it. So Sue needed our input to go back for any further discussions on that bill.
And it's starting in the Senate. So there will be changes in the Senate. There will be more changes in the House. And we should be listening for what those changes are and understanding how they're going to impact our district. Is that it? Anything else? Okay, no more VSBA. and probably a ton more legislative stuff, and I think we've done enough of that today, so we'll talk about that more on, as we get more information. I think that's it for the updates. Can I get, are folks okay with approving both meeting minutes in one motion? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from January 8th and January, I was the 11th, was it the 13th? 15th?
You had to move it, right?
I know,
Because-
payday. It was on the 15th. Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 8th and January 15th as one item?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second? Katie seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor, give me a thumb or an eye. Aye. Any abstentions? Allison, you're abstaining. Any opposed? Okay, unanimous, one abstention. Thank you, everybody. Our next meeting is February 12th. Is there any other business for the end of the meeting?
So real quick, I know you're trying to wrap up. I attended the
3 minutes.
Jericho Underhill Library District Annual Meeting last week. I was the one person sitting in public, so it made the meeting a little bit longer. But they're, you know, they have a special relationship with the school district because that library is kind of on the Browns River campus. And they said that they've developed a really good partnership with the preschools that are like right across the way. And everything's, you know, going well from a relationship perspective with the school district, and they appreciate the $200 lease that they have to pay every year for the land. I said, we do too. We bank on it.
Great. It's a good update. Other business? Anything exciting happening at MMU?
Midterms are over. So that's what you're But that's basically all we got going on that I know.
Okay, that's good to know. Great. All right, well, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second? Thank you, Heather. All in favor,
Aye.
give me a thumb, and then head your way out to wherever you need to go. So all in favor, thanks, everybody. Have a great evening. See y'all in the fall.